Thank you, Nirmal, for introducing us. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this tutorial on electrification. I'm Ramana Anchuri, Education Technical Evangelist at MathWorks. I have with me my team joining here. A couple of my team members will be monitoring the chat window in the virtual environment. During the session, if you have any questions, please post those questions. We will be taking those questions online also. So my team members will be communicating with me. Dr. Dev will also be talking for the second part of this particular session. So this session briefly talks about how you can model electrical systems right from component level model to and scaling up to the electrical grid systems, right? You might have learned about MATLAB Simulink and probably using MATLAB Simulink in your curriculum or for your research. For today's session, we are going to show you right from mathematical modeling to the system level modeling, how you can leverage the tools and then workflows that we presented during the session. So again, if you have any questions during this session, please use the chat window. My team will be constantly monitoring, and if we have to take that question then and there, they will pass that question to me and I will be answering that question. So please do not wait for the session to end. We can have some time to address any specific questions at the end of the session also. All right, so I'll just get started. So before going to the actual session, what we are is MathWorks is the company, and we build products for engineers and scientists, right? And our products are being used by engineers and scientists all over the world, and it is very much penetrated in academia, especially, as you might be knowing already. Two of the flagship products, one is MATLAB, which is a programming environment where you write scripts or functions using already existing powerful MATLAB functions. You can build your own functions also and add it to the library. The other flagship product is Simulink, which is very much popular, especially in industry. Simulink is a block diagram environment where it will enable engineers and scientists to model dynamic systems. So if you have a system which response changes with respect to time, whatever maybe the system is, or whichever the domain it relates to, you can pretty much design that using Simulink. And the other value add that you get when you use Simulink for system modeling is you will be able to generate C, C++ or HDL code and deploy it directly to the hardware, right? Without you having to learn a new programming language to do that stuff. More often, engineers as well as scientists, face a lot of challenges on interfacing the algorithm to the code or onto the web server. So we pretty much take those pain points and then try to resolve that. And this is where the Simulink will provide you that value add, wherein you can quickly go from algorithm development to the deployment very easily. All right, so with that intro, this is the agenda for the session. I will be briefly introducing to the concept of model-based design. Some of you might be knowing that, but you might not be aware this is what model-based design is and how the model-based design is leveraged in industry. Then I'll talk about, start with the mathematical modeling and what are the aspects of physical modeling, and whatever the type of modeling it is, we need the controller design around the plant model that we design. So that's where I will walk you through how to design controllers, be it a linear plant or a non-linear plant. We have workflows, very standard workflows, even the industry is following right now. And then with the intro to the controllers, then that's where I'll talk about the other electrical systems like battery and power converter. These are very much crucial components. Now, if you see a simple example of an electric vehicle, right, pretty much you have a motor, battery, and a power converter, which are very crucial components for the working of a vehicle, right? So we will introduce you to what sort of thing that you can do with battery modeling and power converter modeling. We planned a task for modeling basic electrical systems, but right now we might not get time. So that's where I have a slide where you can gather these models and then try it on your own using MATLAB online. I will talk a little about that at the back end of the session. And then I have Dev, who will talk about the solar PV modeling and grid integration, how you can model solar PVs using Simulink And this is one of the workflow that even industry is following. If you see ABB or Alstom, they use these our solutions to model this PV grid and PV grid systems. And then very much popular system, electrical system that is in trend is microgrid. So that's where you have the distributed energy and more generators, types of generators working in a single grid, and then how do you schedule it, and how do you simulate properly, first of all, and then without you having a physical model at your end is something that they will walk you through. And then we will end the session with a simple task. This is again when you get time today during the entire the conference. I already shared you the files. The registered participants have received the Drive file link as well as the link to access MATLAB online. The task section, you can leverage the sources that I've already given to you, right? So if you have any challenges, you type in the chat, we will be able to address those challenges also, right? So with this agenda in mind, let's just go with a simple case study here. What, as I told you, industry is leveraging on model-based design. So this is one of the case studies. You can see this link in the MathWorks website also. Tesla has used model-based design workflows using Simulink to design their sports vehicle, which is called Roadster. Right? They invested around $150 million to come up with this particular design. And if you see, the main challenge here is the budget is less, so they can't go on designing powertrains and then test it in the field, right? Because they lose a lot of money if at all they do that. So that's where they ended up using MathWorks tools to design various powertrain models and then able to quickly evaluate using simulations. So they iteratively did this powertrain and then optimized and arrived at a design where it will work in reality, right? So each and every component in this particular Roadster vehicle is designed with MATLAB Simulink, entirely with MATLAB Simulink. And just for an information, this is the world's first full electric sports vehicle, right? And you know how Tesla is successful again. So hundreds of powertrain configurations are being able to quickly arrive at an optimized design, right? About a little electrical systems in this session, but if you see an electric vehicle as a whole, there is a mechanical systems, and then there are so many vehicle dynamics that are acting on it. So we should be able to model the electric vehicle as a whole and then create scenarios where if at all it is accelerating at a certain speed, what could be the forces that are acting, and how does a battery or a power converter basically respond to particular scenarios. Okay. So Simulink will enable you to actually simulate those scenarios also. Okay, so including crash tests. So we have a case study where one of the companies use MathWorks tools to do the crash tests also. So that's where the companies are saving a lot in terms of money and then time. Right. So if you look at a basic electric vehicle here, so there are several components, as I told you. So if you see here, there are 4 wheels, which are pretty much the mechanical systems, I would say. But if it's an electric vehicle, the entire source of energy and then how the energy is transferred from motors to the wheels, it's more of an electric in nature, right? And the one crucial point here is the power source is battery. And we know batteries has some limitations, and then lithium-ion battery is very much popular in this particular area, right? And there are several other converters that are needed here, because as in a computer system where you have different peripherals that need different level of voltages, electric vehicle also have several systems inside it. Okay, be it refrigeration or a lighting system. These systems need voltages at different levels. And that's where we need converters. So if you observe here in this particular picture, the battery pack needs a converter to charge and needs a converter to drive the electric motor. Apart from this, the battery pack should also be able to cater to the refrigeration and the lighting system in the electric vehicle. That's where you need different levels of converters, right? Now, if you take out the vehicle as such, and then how do you charge this vehicle? That's where the charging stations comes into picture. Where do these charging stations get power? Again, from the grid, right? Now, it's not about just designing this converter or just designing a battery pack, but we need to be able to integrate this entire system in one single platform and should be able to see what is the influence or what is the performance of each of this component in a given scenario. So that's what Simulink basically enables you to do. You can design grid systems, you can have a design for battery chargers and the whole of the system electric vehicle and able to simulate this particular system as a whole. Okay, so that's where we will have a validity around whether this particular design is going to work in reality. Right. So we'll see each of this component a little briefly, and if you have any questions around designing any of these things, please reach out to us. You will have our mail IDs, and if you are facing any challenges around designing these things, I know many of the research fraternity are very much interested in electric vehicle design. Estimating battery pack performance, and then how this vehicle is integrated to grid and what are the implications on the grid when more electric vehicles comes into picture, right? So just imagine if all the gas stations disappear and charge stations come, there is a huge amount of power that the electric vehicles will be drawing from the grid, and grid should be able to cater to that particular need. Now you should be able to assess what is the effects on grid due to electric vehicles. So that's where Simulink will give you an edge over how you can bring all these things together and simulate as a whole, as a system as a whole, right? So with this background of electric vehicle, I'll just walk you through what is a traditional design the companies usually follow. So if I say Tesla, what is the process they followed right from requirements to deployment, right? So traditionally, if you observe, many of the companies traditionally have followed this particular process where they start with the requirements. This is what you do. You need some requirements, textual requirements that says what you are going to build, what your system should look at the end of the product life cycle, right? That's where these requirements, will give you certain design, and this design can be catered to different domains again. So if it is electric vehicle, there are controls involved, there is mechanical systems involved, there are electrical systems involved, right? Now, each of this is catered to different domains of engineering, right? So we usually have barriers in between, and the controls engineer might not know fully about the mechanical stuff, and mechanical engineer might not know most about the electrical stuff. Okay, but what they use is they just come together and then design these systems separately and then implement the embedded software. That's where the engineers sit and then write the manual code, right? And once the code is written, they just integrate that with the hardware boards and test the entire logic. Now, what's the problem here? The thing here is the design is hard to validate against system requirements. What does it mean is whatever the design this controls engineer has done, okay, did you validate against the requirement? Is the requirement is talking exactly this thing and then you came up with this? So that there's a lot of manual process again to involve to actually validate whether that is exactly the requirement and the design is actually speaking about that particular requirement. The other aspect is, manual coding is slow and very error prone, right? That's where you will see a lot of defects and then a lot of iterations people will be doing around each of this particular domain, be it controls, mechanical or electrical. And the other thing, as I told, there is a barrier between these domains, right? And this is what we see in the universities also. Mechanical engineer, typically, if there is a requirement that is specified in electrical, will not be much interested in knowing that. But if you see electric vehicle as a whole, it doesn't care about whether it is electrical or mechanical. Everything should work together and then fall in line, right? Now, how do we ensure that in a traditional workflow, this is a main problem where these systems cannot talk with each other, and you might be ending up designing a mechanical system in one platform, control system in another platform, and later point of time you came to know that these two platforms doesn't talk, and you kill a lot of time, right, and money also. And the other thing is, as I told you, they're error prone. If there is a human involved, it is error prone. Okay, so that will result in expensive prototypes. So before building a product, we actually rapidly prototype, right? But prototype itself is taking a lot of iterations. So that is not something that companies will look for. and they always look for going to market as fast as possible, right? So they need to make this entire process as fast as possible. And this traditional design process basically is not catered, it's not recommended to follow if at all you want to avoid these scenarios. Now, what can be done is using model-based design. So if you use model-based design, all these systems, be it controls, mechanical, electrical, can be designed in one single platform, and that is Simulink that I'm going to talk about, right? So you can optimize. All the engineers from different backgrounds can use the same platform to come up with this design. And then you need not, again, once the design is traced, it is just a matter of clicking a one button where you can automatically generate C or C++ code. If it's an embedded processor or a controller, you can generate C++ code. And if you're a hardware or the product requires high performance computing where you are using FPGAs, you can generate HDL code and then synthesize the code with a third-party tool and deploy that hardware software onto the hardware, right? The other aspect is, again, before you burning your hands at the end of the product lifecycle, that this is not what we are trying to build, but these are the errors that came out, and we need to change the requirements as a whole. So that is again a very crucial thing that companies look for because it will jeopardize the entire product lifecycle, right? So that's where Simulink will enable you to actually deploy the plant models as well as control models on HIL systems and quickly iterate and then test with all the test cases possible, right? So that's where you will save a lot of time there. And then Simulink provides you workflows on validating the design, the code, and then integration, the hardware with respect to the requirements at each and every point of time, right? So you need not end up in testing at the end of the product lifecycle. You do testing as you go. So that's what the Simulink provides. So if you follow this workflow, then mostly at the integration and test session, you will be able to validate successfully against the requirements. Now, how is it relevant to academia? Now, if you say we are professors and we are not building a product as such, but how is this useful? As even for us, we have a limited time, right? Hardly 3 to 4 months for a semester, and then you have to come up with some research project or student doing a project around electric vehicles. You can follow this process and then probably come up with flying colors within no time, right? So if you need any help with this entire flow, there are toolboxes and blocks available to perform these actions automatically. You need not, again, write a painful manual code to integrate this entire workflow in your systems, right? So please reach out to us on how do we do this, each of this step, what are the toolboxes that are relevant. We will be able to help you. The other model-based design. Now, if you see, where do we start basically is you design with simulation. Whatever the requirement that you have, you pick up some library blocks and then simulate, build that particular logic using Simulink. Then whatever the blocks that you take, you need to specify some parameter values. That's what we call as executable specifications. Okay, so whatever the model that you build in Simulink needs some data to be entered in each of these blocks. So this can be your executable specifications that you have in your requirements document, right? So once you have that models ready with the executable specifications, what you can do is you can continuously test and verify. So simulations are faster to do, and then you will be able to validate this the simulation results against your requirements very fast and very easily, right? And once you have the test and verification done, that's where you deploy the algorithm onto the hardware. That's where the auto code generation aspect comes into picture. So you start with the design with executable specifications, you get some simulation results, and once these results are in line with the requirements that you have in your hand, that's where you automatically generate code. And once you have the code, you can compile this code, generate object code, and deploy onto the hardware. Right. So the hardware can be anything. Right now, I'm showing the Arduino here, but we provide support for a bunch of hardware boards, be it Texas Instruments, Legos, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, Parrot mini drones. So depending upon your domain, even if it is wireless systems or developing some SDR, software-defined radios, we have workflows where you can deploy this code very easily onto the hardware without you having to learn a new programming language, right? So with this background of model-based design, let's just jump into the actual systems here. Now, when you come with modeling a dynamic system, as I told you previously, Simulink is part modeling dynamic systems. Now, traditionally or usually what we follow is some approaches where the first principle modeling we basically call, or a data-driven modeling. First principle modeling is more inclined towards getting some equations and then programming for that, or using some block diagrams and then you do that stuff, right? The other way of first principle modeling where you add some a little higher fidelity is around physical networks. Okay, so this is very much inclined to what students usually do in the labs using breadboards, where they use the physical components and then realize your logic and evaluate the results, right? So you can do that sort of stuff in the simulation environment also. Okay. The other thing is the data-driven modeling, very much popular. Again, when you have a data available for a system, input and output data, you can pretty much take this data and apply some algorithms and come up with a system model. Okay, so statistical methods, system identification tool, or neural networks will help you. Now, there is a gray area around this where you suppose say you have a network configuration, but not sure about what should be the parameters in that particular network. That's where the parameter tuning comes into picture, where you have the best of both worlds, right? So you have a data available, and also you have some rough configuration of how the physical system basically is. Okay? You can use parameter tuning to realize actual planned model in the simulation environment. Okay. What we provide is we have workflows and toolboxes and block sets that cater to each of this modeling approach. Right. So we'll be looking at a couple of modeling approaches here that I mentioned very briefly. But if you have any questions on any of this particular modeling approach, so please write to us. Let us know in the chat, then we will reach out to you. Let's see how it is done with a block diagram approach, which is Simulink. So we'll start with a DC motor in Simulink. If you already are aware of this, apologize because we just want to take you from basics to the actual system level models. What we usually do is if you are pretty much new to Simulink environment, we just want to pick this particular example. But if you already know, please apologize. Apologies for that. So how to model a DC motor in Simulink? So pretty much we have equations. Students study these equations in the many of the textbooks. Now, a DC motor is designed using a simple RL, which caters to the how the winding basically perform, right? And then there is a back EMF that acts on it, which balances the current taken by the DC motor. Now, if you see the equations here, I rewritten these equations where you have one equation for current and one equation for the angular velocity, right? Now, if I have these equations, how do I do this stuff using Simulink? This is how. Okay. Now, I have two equations. One is current and one is angular speed, angular velocity. So here the current equation has some mathematical operations that is done, okay, and we are integrating that equation over the time. And if you see the equation inside the braces, right, we start with inside V minus K into omega minus IR. Now, how do you model this equation in Simulink? Is you pick up some bunch of blocks in the Simulink library, which does some mathematical operations. Okay, so I have an input which is mentioned as a voltage V minus K into omega. So K is a constant, and I have a K which is represented by gain, and then omega I am calculating from other equation where I get omega from this particular equation. So K into omega is here, and then you need to subtract I into R. That's where the calculated I is fed back multiplied with the resistance R. Okay, so these are the gain blocks, and this is the subtract block. You can add many ports depending upon your equation. And then this particular component, V minus K omega into IR, is multiplied by reciprocal inductance. That's where We took again the gain block, multiplied with 1 by L, and you need to integrate, right? So that's where the integrated block comes. So this integration is going to give me the current, and that's what this current is. Okay. So similarly, the same equation can be modeled using similar sort of blocks, but this is again the mechanical system side of it, and this is the electrical side of it, right? So pretty much once you have the speed and you want what is the angle, you can integrate and then convert that into radians to degrees. So if in a nutshell, if you see, you have all the blocks that are needed to design these equations. So irrespective of what the particular plant is, once you have got equations, the same thing can be followed for mass spring damper system also, very much popular in controls we usually study. So once you have an equation, you can perform this modeling using Simulink library blocks. These are very basic library blocks and not necessarily inclined to the electrical systems. It can be in any domain. So if you have an equation, you will be able to do this, right? So before going to the next topic, I just want to show you how this is simulated in Simulink. Let me just go back to MATLAB. So in MATLAB, I have a model here. So for people who are new to this, so this is the MATLAB window. I have a, the path to the current folder, the files, and this is the address bar. You can set the address where the files you have. And this is the tool strip. You have home, plots, and apps tabs here. This is the command window where you can quickly evaluate some MATLAB commands. Right, and this is the workspace. Workspace is nothing but a piece of memory MATLAB assigns in that particular session, and you can create variables or delete variables or do some stuff here. So the same variables that you define here in the workspace can also be read into the Simulink models. Now, since we are talking about Simulink, you can open Simulink from this particular button or type Simulink in the MATLAB command window. Okay, so a new launch window opens to you. So before you go with this, then you can explore actually different templates that are available depending upon what is the domain that you are working on. Okay, so suppose if you are working on Simscape, you can click a simple template here where a commonly used blocks are already listed in the template, right? So right now I will pick a simple blank Simulink model. All right, so once you click on this, a new Simulink window opens. This is the model file, and this is the canvas working area where you build the logic, right? So just like what we see in the equation-based modeling on the PowerPoint slide, you can take blocks from this library browser. So library browser has this all the blocks listed. Again, depending upon the domain that you are working, there are block sets available that cater to different domains of engineering. So be it aerospace or automated driving or control systems, or you want to develop a produce HDL code, or on a powertrain models, you want to design some vehicle systems, you can do that stuff. So there are block sets, powerful block sets, in fact, which you can readily use to build systems, or you can use the commonly used blocks that are there under Simulink to build some mathematical models, right? And the other good thing is these blocks are compatible to most of the blocks that are catered to the domain-specific things, right? So now I'll just open one simple model where I have already built the DC motor equations. I have shared all these files to the registered participants. You have received the drive link. Please explore. You can download those files and then explore those. Basically, there are two folders: one for participants and one solutions folder. Based on the task that we have given, I already have another folder with the solutions where the tuning of plant models is done, right? So let's just see this simple DC motor. Now, if I go inside the subsystem, this is what we have already seen in the slide, right? So I have these equations for voltage and current, and if you see here, pretty much whatever I flashed in the PowerPoint is this the same. I'm not doing it manually in the interest of time, but each of these parameters has got a value: resistance or the motor constants, and then the winding inductance, the moment of inertia J. right? So we need to specify these values. I already have these values in the MATLAB workspace, so I'm not explicitly defining them. So in a way, you can give a variable name to the block and then define that value of the variable in the MATLAB workspace. So that is one of the best practices that you can do. And what I did is I just made this entire system as a subsystem. Okay, once you make a subsystem, then entire logic will reside in this particular block. And I just have an image of a motor here. You can pick a particular image depending upon what is the logic that you have built inside, right? Now, what we are trying to do here is I'm exciting this motor with a 24 volt, and I have a load torque which has a step input. So right now, below 4 seconds, I'm not applying any load on the motor, and after 4 seconds, I'm applying 0.1 Newton meter onto the motor. Now, what we typically should be able to see is once we apply voltage to the motor, it builds up speed and then settles at a particular value. And when you apply load, the speed basically drops a little. So that is one thing that we learn from theory. Now, you can validate that theoretical understanding in the simulation environment. Now, if you see, my motor slowly built the speed and then settled at speed. And once I have a load torque applied, the speed of the motor reduced. Okay, so in a way, you can quickly validate whether whatever the mathematical model you have built is inclined with what you learned in textbooks or in classrooms, right? So this is a simple DC motor model. Let me just go back to the slides. Dhruv, any questions at this particular moment? Please let me know.
Romana, it's going well. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. All right, so that is about mathematical modeling. Now, I spoke about another environment where you can do some physical modeling stuff. So this is very much, you can just understand this like how students do on a breadboard. So if at all we ask them to, evaluate the time response of a series RLC circuit, what they usually do is take this RLC components and then put it on the breadboard and excite with a step. If it is resonance, then you sweep the voltages with frequency and then find out where the voltage magnification is occurring, and the frequency corresponding to that is a resonant frequency. So this is what usually students do in the labs using physical components. Now you can bring that the same approach in the simulation environment. So we are providing a new modeling environment, which is physical modeling, where you have components where you can connect them just like how you do that stuff in a lab, right? So let's just see what this Simscape environment is. Now, what Simscape environment provides is a multi-domain capability. Again, if you observe even the motor, there are essentially the electrical and mechanical side of it, right? So we can't just look at the electrical side of it if you only want to evaluate the performance of the machine, right? So that's where Simscape enables you to model these multi-domain systems. Okay, suppose you want to model entire refrigeration system. Now, a refrigeration system has motors, mechanical systems. There is chemical, there is fluids involved in it. Now, we can't just evaluate an electrical system and then say this is going to work. No, because it has to interact with the other domains also, right? So that's where the Simscape brings you to leverage on this multi-domain aspects and build these systems as a whole in one single platform and evaluate the response of the system. So some things I flashed here, be it electrical, mechanical, magnetic, or thermal. The other advantage using with Simscape is you need not stick to the blocks that are already existing. You can create your own blocks. So in a way, if I have a resistor and you want this resistor to perform a little differently when the temperature goes beyond certain value, you can introduce those nonlinearities using a language called Simscape language. Okay, so if you are interested in that, we have a manual which provides a step-by-step approach of how to define a component in Simscape language, and then customize that block behavior depending upon whatever the quantities that go through it or across it, right? So be it hydraulic or a liquid or a gas, there are blocks readily available, and very good examples as a shipping demos on how to use these blocks. You can explore that and build the entire system. The other thing is with respect to the fidelity again, suppose say you want to build a system with certain assumptions. You can do that using average models, right? Where you can quickly, rapidly prototype to evaluate whatever the idea that you have. But if you want to build a high fidelity model where you want the exact plan to be replicated in the simulation environment, you can do that with the basic components. So Simscape enables you to do right from low fidelity to high fidelity models, depending upon your requirement, right? And the other thing is these plant models are has a capability to have an automatic C code where you can generate C code from the plant models, deploy it onto the HL system, and evaluate the controller behavior also. So we have workflows, very standard workflows. The industry is also following that. Please reach out to us. So the plant models can also be, readily, you can generate code and then get the real-time performance of the plant model. So you need not be evaluating the simulation environment, but you can take this to HL systems and then evaluate the response of the models, right? So with that in mind, then we'll just move. I will have one other case where DC motor is designed using physical components, right? So let me just go over there. So this is the DC motor in Simscape environment. If you observe here, I have a block that shows the voltage excited by a voltage, and the winding, the armature resistance and the inductance are represented by the resistance and inductance components here. And there is one block that shows you the rotational electromechanical converter. This is where the electrical system is integrated with the mechanical system, and you have the option to give what are the mechanical parameters, be it the damping coefficient or the moment of inertia of the, or if you have another pulley that is attached to the DC motor, all right? So you can mention that through this mechanical block sets, right? So entire DC motor in Simscape looks something like this, and it is very much different from the usual Simulink environment, right? So one thing is, the previous case which we designed within mathematical model, if you ask me, does the physical laws holds good there in any particular node? If you say, does Kirchhoff current law holds good or a Kirchhoff voltage law holds good? No, in mathematical modeling. Okay, it doesn't make sense there. It's just the equation-based modeling. But if you see, if you ask me whether the current flowing through this particular resistance does physical laws holds good? Yes. Okay, so you can consider these lines to be the electrical wires that you usually see in breadboard modeling, right, in your labs. So physical modeling gives you that edge on picking up these components and then building your physical plans very, very easily. And this is one of the powerful approach to do that stuff, right? So before moving to that, I'll just show you that particular model in the MATLAB environment. Again, all these models are shared to you using the latest version. You can just go through them. So this is the physical model of a DC motor where I have a DC voltage source. You can give certain voltages to this and then simulate the model. Suppose 12 volt you are giving. Resistance and inductance. Also, if you want to change the behavior of an inductance, suppose say you want to simulate the saturation, what happens if the magnets in a DC motor saturate, and what is the behavior of a system. You can do that stuff by going to the source code and then changing the behavior of the inductor, right? So as I told you, this is something called Simscape language. You can change the block behavior depending upon your requirement. Okay, so right now the saturation component is not involved here, but you can do that. Simscape allows you to do that stuff, right? So with this, let me go back to that. So what we have seen till now is how to design a DC motor, be it mathematical modeling or a physical modeling. Now we'll see another component of an electric vehicle, which is a power converter. Right? Again, power converters are crucial components because whatever the source of supply that you have, sometimes we may have to change the voltage levels or completely change the form of energy. Suppose your grid is giving you AC supply, but the charging station basically has to convert this AC supply to DC and then a controlled way it need to charge the battery. That's where the power converters comes into picture. Now, irrespective of the source that you have, your load might require AC or a DC or regulated AC or a fixed AC or a DC. Whatever it is, you can develop power converters using Simscape Electrical and develop controllers wherein you can sense the voltages, and then depending upon the references that you select, you can generate PWM signals and able to simulate this. Now, this is not just about simulation again. So once you have the controller design, this should be deployed onto the hardware, right? That's where you can generate C code out of this controller, deploy it onto the hardware, integrate with the physical plant, which is the converter, and you will be able to evaluate the performance, right? So I'll just take a simple example as part of power converters here. Taking an example of a headlamp of a car. So this particular the car is a Mercedes-Benz S-Class. So this has a T8 Texas Instruments board, which has a SAPIC converter. SAPIC is nothing but a single-ended primary inductor converter. And then there are some LED strips. These are high power LED strips that gives out illumination, a lot of illumination. And what this converter basically does is it powers these LEDs through these drivers. Okay, so these are the MOSFET drivers that we have. And the SAPIC provides the regulated voltage to the LEDs through the drivers. And what user will be able to control is the brightness of the LEDs as well as which strip need to be illuminated. Okay, so Mercedes, the company has come up with this innovative solution where this headlamps basically avoids the glare in front, and then will be able to focus the illumination exactly on the road. Okay, so wherein there won't be any discomfort with respect to what are the signs that you are looking at the side of the road. So there is a nice video again at the MathWorks website on how Mercedes-Benz used this particular solution to come up with an innovative headlamps, right? So if this is the case and you are trying to design this APIC and then want to deploy a control algorithm onto this hardware, okay, so Simulink provides you that solution and workflow. How it is usually done is through Simulink control design, where whatever the plant model that you have, you can come up with a PID controller design where you can automatically tune these PID gains based on the plant model that you have. And once you have the design, you can easily deploy this control algorithm onto the hardware. So I'll just walk you through what are the two techniques. One is designing the controller for linear plants and for nonlinear plants. So there are workflows, standard workflows that you can follow. And this is irrespective of the plant model. So right now I'm taking the plant model to be a converter because we will be able to simulate the nonlinear behavior of the plant and then what is the workflow. But for linear plants, let's take a simple case, the DC motor case. Okay, so I'll just go back to the MATLAB window. Drew, any questions we need to address here at this moment?
No questions at this time. I think people like the power converters, so that's good.
Okay. So it's not just plant models, right? We need to come up with the controller design also. Again, if you say which is important, whether the control model or a plant model, both are equally important, because unless you have a proper plant model, whatever the control design that you come up with will not suffice, right? So your plant model should be as good or as close as your physical plant. So that's where the Simscape gives you this fidelity. You can create high fidelity models using Simscape. And once you have a plant model on the simulation environment, control design is very much straightforward. You need not struggle in coming up with better gains of the PIDs, right? So what I have here in the model is, I have a DC motor. This we have already seen, which is equation-based modeling. Okay, so there are no non-linearities here. It's just the two equations we are solving. And the usual load torque, we are applying load torque. And what we are trying to do here is want to stabilize the speed irrespective of the load on the motor I want to stabilize this speed depending upon whatever the reference that I've chosen. So the problem statement here is, irrespective of the load, the motor should be able to run at the same speed that is defined by the user. Okay, so the user defined speed is thus 4 RPM, right? Now, what we are trying to do is what is sensing what is the actual speed, and then finding out the error and processing that error through a PID controller. And PID controller will give me an actuating signal such that whatever the change in the load, the speed of the motor is maintained the same with respect to the reference defined, right? So this is the problem statement. Now this is the PID controller. What we are doing here is I have access to each of these games, PIDs externally, okay? So one thing you can do here is when you double click on the PID, it will give you two options to define PIDs externally or internally. Okay, if it is internal, you can just write in this block itself, or if it is external, you can mention that through the external blocks, right? So PID, and this is the filter constant for derivative gain. Right now, I'm keeping that as 100, so no harm in doing that. Now, what we are trying to do is we virtually connected these PIDs to these knobs. You can find these knobs in the dashboard of a library. Okay, so you can create nice UIs using these knobs. Your students will be very much interested if you use these dashboards while course delivery of any of the systems. So they can just play around and then see. So this particular model is best suits if at all you are teaching PIDs to students on how each of these gain influences the response of the system. Okay, so they can just play around on these knobs. Now let's just simulate this model and see the response of the system. So what I have here is just a second here. Yeah, here. So when I simulate this particular model with those gains, if you see, these are the gains that are randomly set, P, I, and D. Okay, and the response of the system is something like this. So obviously this is unstable system, right? So with these gains, the system is unstable and you can't control it. What you can do while teaching this these concepts to students is ask them to play around on each of these gains and then come up with some insights on what they learned on how these gains are influencing the response of the system. So if you observe here, with those gains, the system is stable and then it's able to set at a 4 RPM irrespective of the load changes, right? Okay, so each of these gains you can iteratively change and then ask the students to come up with what are the insights, what is that they learn with respect to the settling time, peak overshoot, or how better you can come up with some time response specifications that is given, right? So this model is very much, it comes very much handy when you are teaching for controllers. Now, what if you are not teaching, but you just want to come up with some tuned gains faster so that you can rapidly prototype? So that brings us to the next demo, where you can tune the gains automatically. Okay. So this is the model again. Right now, the same PID, but here, what we are trying to do here is we define the PIDs internally. Okay, and right now, PI and D are 110. Okay. So let's just check. These are the default values that you see when you pick the PIDs. Let's just check how the system is with these gains. Okay. So this is the response now. Now, if you observe clearly, the motor is not settling at a speed. It's taking a relatively lot of time, and even when the load is applied, the speed dropped very much, right? And it is not able to catch to the reference speed. So right now, this PID gains doesn't work for this motor. Now, what you can do is double click on the PID, and you have an option to tune the PIDs, right? So once you do that, what Simulink does in the background is it takes this plant model and then there's an algorithm that runs in the background which gives you a tuned response. Now, if you observe, the dotted lines response is the block response, which has the gains 1, 1, 0. And the tuned response is something like this, which is pretty much what we actually see for a unit step response. This is the response of the plant, right? Now, what are the gains that the system has already come up with? You can just click on show parameters and you see the tuned gains are this. And the block has these values currently. So with these values, the performance is not proper. That's where you can automatically tune it. Now, even with the tuned parameters, if you're not satisfied with respect to the time response specifications that you wanted, you can play around this sliders to improve the performance a little. Okay, so you can make the system more robust or more faster using these two sliders. And once you are okay with this response, what you can do is you can click on the update block. All right, so once you do this, the PID gains in the PID controller block will get updated. Now, if you observe here, these are the gains and the filter coefficient, right? Now, once you do that, and let us see how the system response is. This is pretty much what we wanted, right? So the desired speed is 3. It's set at 3, and then you have reasonably faster below 1 second. The motor is able to catch to the reference speed, and even when there is a low disturbance, there's a blip. But again, you can work on this and come up with a better gains. Okay, but essentially we are able to control the speed of the motor irrespective of the disturbance. Right. So with that, let me go back to the slides.
Ramana, sorry, there was a quick question.
Yeah.
People have asked, can we simulate mechanical systems also? And is there any examples? So maybe in the documentation we can show.
Sure. Yeah. So mechanical systems, yes, you can design. Pretty much you can use this help functionality here. Entire documentation gets populated based on the strings that you use to search. You will get into the documentation as well as examples, any apps or functions around that particular system. So if you see, I just search for mass damper system. Okay, so there are bunch of examples already available, right? So you can just explore that, open the model. So this is mass spring damper system using Simscape. Okay, so if you observe here, I have a damper spring and then the mass which is excited with certain force, and there is a controller. So essentially what we did with DC motor, the same thing is done here also, where we are controlling the position of this mass, right? So yes, you can explore this. Only thing is you need to get the right strings and then search it in the help section. There are examples, functions, blocks, and probably the syntax that you might have will be helpful around this. So this is one way where you can get the ready models on how to work on this, right? So I personally look at these examples and then design my own models, right? So this gives a very good starting on what are the best modeling practices and how to use a particular block, right? So please leverage on this help section. Documentation is also huge, where we are very much strong on what is built and then how each of the particular block need to be modeled, right? All right, so that is with PIDs where the plant is a linear one, right? But what if you have a non-linear plant, something like a power converter? Okay, so power converter obviously has some switch, a fast acting switch, and there is a huge non-linearity there. So that's where there is a workflow where you can come up with some PID gains with for non-linear plants also. So let me go back to MATLAB and then quickly show you how to do that. Okay. So for this case, I'm picking a power converter example. So what I have here is previously I told you there is this the Texas Instrument board where it is used for lighting headlamps of a Mercedes car, right? So they use this SAPIC converter, single-ended primary inductor converter, where you want to regulate the output voltage fixed DC to variable DC. Okay. Again, variable DC depends upon the user command. This step input shows what is the user mentioned, and then the output should be fit to this particular reference that is given. Now, I'm not going to the entire the converter model here, but want to show how you can develop PID or come up with the optimal PID gains, even if the plant is nonlinear, right? Now, in the current state, let us simulate this model and see how the reference and actual voltages are appearing here. Okay, so when I simulate this, this is the response of the system. Right now it is simulating, and then my references are somewhere around here, my actuals are here. So that means the PID gains are not working properly, right? So obviously you need to tune these gains. So let me just go back and then show you how to tune the PIDs for a nonlinear plant. Okay. So when you click on PID block here, just like how we did for linear plant for motor, right now the proportional integral gains are 1 and 1, which are not giving me the performance that I wanted. So you can just click on tune button. And it is showing the linearizing plant, but the plant is actually the nonlinear plant, right? So that's where the usual workflow will not work if the plant is nonlinear. Okay. And Simulink will show you that flag that the plant cannot be linearized, and then the tuning cannot be done. Okay, so here if you will see the flag. Okay, and then it is not giving me any output here based on the block or tune response. Now, what you can do with this is, once you have this flag, that means you can't follow the standard procedure for tuning. That's where you need to identify a new plant. What I mean by identifying a new plant is Simulink excites this model by breaking the control loop and then collects the output response of a plant. Based on this input and output data, it will identify a new plant. Okay, so in the background, what we are doing essentially is a system identification. So once the system identification is done, we apply controller gains onto the model that is identified by the data. Then take the gains and then apply to the actual physical plant. So that is what we are trying to do. Now, once you click on that, what you can do is get IO data and then click on simulate data. Okay, so it's okay if you are not able to follow this entire procedure, but one key takeaway I want to you to take is that there is a standard procedure where you can tune the controllers for nonlinear plants also. Okay, so what I mean by again nonlinear plant is it can be in any domains also. Okay, so what this flag is showing is it is disconnecting the PID, applies this step input, collects this error input, and then identifies a new system. Right? So what I will do is run the simulation. While the simulation is running, I will take up any questions if you have. Drew, anything? So what is happening in the background is Simulink disconnects the PID controller in the model. Okay, excites the model with a step input, collects the output. Based on that input and output data, it will come up with a plant model. Right? While this is running, let me show you the help section for power. If at all you are working in the power converters area. So there are a lot of shipping demos and then documentation available. There are reference papers also where we mention how the design is done and the reference data and all such. Okay, so there are huge number of examples and then topics available. It's just a matter of time you explore that and find out what is the best modeling practice done and how the particular block is being used. You can quickly leverage on top of this examples models, right? Let me check this if this is done. It's compiling the model. I want to show this definitely because this is something that we came across from several faculty also on how to go with nonlinear plans. Okay, so the workflow goes like this. Once you identify the new plan, right? What you can do is you can get click on this get IO data, and once you are done that, what Simulink shows you is a plot, two plots, basically depending based on the identified plant and what is the plant response. And you can also optimize the both by auto estimating the depending upon number of poles that you give. Here it's all about there are two plots essentially that you get. One is identified plant and another is the response of the plant. And in order to fit these two plots, you can use auto estimate option where iteratively there is an optimization algorithm that runs where it fits the plant to the data, right? So once you have this fit, you can go to PID Auto Tuner and then change these sliders and come up with gains. So once you have those gains, you can click on update block and then update this. So I briefly remember there is some gains here. I think around 40. This being 1 e power minus 3 or so. Okay. So let me just simulate this. So you get those gains by automatically tuning this nonlinear plant using the method I showed you. But if you have any challenges on using that too, please let us know. Okay, so this should give a better fit with respect to the output and input, right? So I vaguely remember those gains, but Simulink will give you those gains. Right? So sorry for the lag. Not sure why it's not responding faster, but I think you get the point. So the one key takeaway here is please remember that there is a workflow where you can come up with auto-tuned PID gains even for nonlinear plants. With that, so what we have seen is once you have tuned the controllers, now what? It's about again implementing these controllers on the hardware, right? So that's where depending upon the hardware that you have at your end, if it is microcontrollers or DSPs, you can generate C++ code, compile the code and flash the object code onto the hardware. If it is FPGAs or ASICs at your hand and you want to do some high performance computing stuff, you can generate HDL code out of a controller. Synthesize this code using third-party software. We have a partner with Xilinx also, where the HDL code generated can be synthesized and deployed onto the FPGAs directly, right? So again, you need not struggle in these interfaces. Pretty much everything is automated. Once you have the algorithm ready, this should not take much time on deploying, right? So depending upon the hardware at your end, you can generate either C++ or HDL code. All right. So once implemented, now what? How do you leverage on Simulink products? This is one video that I have here where the Simulink model is interacting with the hardware, and you can actually read the data on the hardware on how this control algorithm is performing, right? So I have in the Simulink model where the PID controller is where the code is generated and deployed onto the hardware, okay? And I can change some controls here, changing the brightness or changing the strip of the LED that I want to lit. Everything can be controlled from within the Simulink also. So interactively, you can evaluate how these gains are working from within the Simulink. So this is where we call this as hardware in-loop simulation, right? So this is how you can validate very quickly whether the control algorithm is working properly on the hardware. And once you have this validation, you can just deploy the code permanently onto the products, right? So with this, what we have seen essentially is I walk you through a basic motor modeling from equations to the physical modeling. And then we jump to the power converters where you can leverage on Simscape Electrical to design converters. And I walked you through the control aspect of it, how to control motors or power converters, be it nonlinear or linear plants. And then now it's the time to reflect on battery. Okay, so battery is again a very much crucial part. Many of the players are already there in the market who want to come up with a better battery pack models, right? So let's just briefly look at what we have around batteries. Okay, so if you see the basic battery models here, any textbook that you refer is battery constitutes a simple open circuit voltage, okay, which is denoted by EM here. And then there is a terminal resistance R naught. So this accounts for terminal as well as the wire resistance, right? And then there is a transient dynamics involved where the battery might take some time to come up to settle at certain voltages once the discharge cycle happen. Okay, and that is designed using RC combination here. What we are not trying to model is the parasitic losses, because these are pretty much very less, and especially for lithium-ion batteries, we can neglect these parasitic losses. So that will give you a relatively an easy equivalent circuit model for battery. One challenge with battery again here is each of this component, be it voltage, capacitors or resistance, each of this component is a function of state of charge of a battery or temperature, current or voltage, right? So it's not just one single value where you where you apply and then come up with a battery model, because this is very non-linear thing, and batteries are very much sensitive to temperature. So these parameters basically vary as the battery is charging or discharging, and depending on the temperature, the ambient temperature of the battery also, right? So that's where once we have a rough equivalent circuit here, where I have a voltage EM, there is a parallel combination RC, which accounts for the dynamics of the battery. And then there is a series resistance that accounts for terminal and wire resistance. Now, typically once the battery goes through a discharge cycle, right, the voltage that you actually observe is this. Okay, so for a particular discharge of the current, waveform is something like this. So right now, the initial voltage, we call this blue color line, is the open circuit voltage. And once you see the discharge pulse, the voltage drops and then builds at and then settles at a certain other voltage. Okay, so this is for one discharge pulse. Okay, so once you load this particular equivalent circuit with a load, right, and you apply one discharge pulse, this is how the voltage is going to change. Now, how do we come up with this particular equivalent circuit? Now, if you see this particular response, obviously the dip in voltage is accounted by the instantaneous dip is accounted by resistance R naught. Okay, and the dynamic nature, how the voltage is again coming to this initial voltage. But if you see the open circuit voltage here and here, there's a dip, right? So that is what is expected. As battery is discharging, the voltage also goes down, right? So it is settling at a different voltage. But this relaxation is not instantaneous, but it is sluggish, and this is being modeled by this RC circuit. Okay, so there is time constant involved here, right? And that is modeled by this RC, and depending upon how exact this combination of this RC circuits. Okay, so with that, what you can do when we go to model, it is basically both. Okay, so we have data to test parameters properly, such that it behaves like your real battery that you have in your lab. Okay, so what we usually follow is the parameter estimation. This experiment, there's a workflow here. What we have is, in the model, I have this battery model that is constructed with the voltage blocks, resistor, capacitor, and resistance. And what I'm trying to do is picking up this EM, R1 and R0 and C1, such that the model that I built in Simulink is exactly behaving like the battery that I have in the lab. Okay. So what you have to do for this, you need to conduct an experiment in the lab, first of all, and capture the voltage and current of the battery. Okay. And once you capture the voltage and current of the battery, you simulate the model and then try to validate against the experiment. If the value, if the output is not same, output given by the model or the experiment with respect to the experiment, then you need to change the values properly. And you need to iterate this unless until the output given by the model is fitting with the experimental data that you have at your hand. Okay, so this is what parameter estimation basically enables you to do. Okay, and this is part of a Simulink design optimization toolbox. You can invoke this parameter estimation from with Simulink environment also. There is a workflow if anyone is interested in this. I'm not going to do this because it takes some time to estimate. But if you're interested, please let us know. We will reach out to you. Okay. So essentially, the input is current for both of this model and experiment, and you measure the voltages. You iterate that until the model, the generated voltages by model is same as the experiment by iteratively changing these parameter values. Right. So there is a battery pack model. I don't want to go through this, but it is. I shared these models also. Please go through it. If you have any questions, let me know. So I just want to make one point here. I told Simscape is a multi-domain environment. You here, if you observe, this is a battery pack which contains 10 cells inside it, and this battery pack also has a thermal modeling where you can define what is the ambient temperature of this battery pack. Okay, through certain inputs. So right now, this battery pack is loaded with this current waveform, and then you define ambient temperature of this battery through this particular input, right? So these blocks in orange color belong to Simscape Thermal, wherein you can take this multi-domain aspects of it. So I'll just show you the outputs here. Of time, I'll just go to the next aspect. Now batteries, again, battery is nothing but a plant model, right? It needs a controller again. So what you usually see and recall is batteries needs this systems called battery management systems, where you need to have a constant check on whether each of the cell has the same voltage, whether the current that is flowing through the battery or out of the battery is within the limits. And depending upon whether a battery is charging or discharging, you will take certain actions, and you will have some diagnostics continuously running whether the temperature is within the limits, whether the voltage and currents are within the limits. So that's where we have a model that captures all these aspects. And if you remember, the state of charge is not something that you can measure from the sensors. You need to estimate it from the known values. So that's where the Kalman filtering and Coulomb counting algorithms are implemented. This model is also shared to you. You can go through that, and then if you have any questions around how to implement this or how to change based on your requirement, you can reach out to us. Right. So this leverages Stateflow. Stateflow is again a powerful concept within the Simulink, where you have a flow diagram approach, and at the end, this logic need to be run on the hardware, right? That's where you can auto-generate a C code out of this and deploy it onto the BMS hardware. Okay, so we have support for NXP32 boards. NXP is the manufacturer for BMS cards. You apply this code on that and then validate your algorithm. Right. So let's just recap what we have seen. Covered the simple motor aspects, mathematical and physical modeling. Then we jumped into power converters and controlling power converters, where that's where we emphasized on nonlinear plant tuning of nonlinear, how to model batteries, and then battery management system. Right. So if you have any questions at this moment, please type in the chat. Now, how do we bring this together? Now, we have component model for converter, motor, and then power converter separately. But what I told previously while going through the model-based design is the ability to develop everything in the simulation, right? So this is where you can bring the vehicle dynamics, the power converter performance or a battery performance in one single model, and you can evaluate against such requirements. So if you observe here, this particular model has blocks that defines what is the environment the vehicle is, what is the wind speed, what is the acceleration, deceleration, all everything is defined as an executable specification. And this model especially has a regenerative braking capability where when you are decelerating, you will be able to extract some power from the wheels and then charge the batteries, right? So pretty much what is expected of a real physical plant, you can bring that onto the simulation environment and validate against the requirements. So what we have here in the plot series, FTP drive cycle, right? So it's nothing but a federal test procedure where the US Department will validate any vehicle model by applying this cycle, and then they evaluate the fuel economy. If it is fossil fuel car, then they evaluate what is the emissions that are coming out, right? So we have solutions on fossil fuel vehicles or hybrid electric vehicles or full electric vehicles, where you can quickly evaluate the battery performance against a particular scenario. Also, you will be able to take vehicle dynamics aspect also into picture and then see how battery or a power converter is performing with respect to that particular drive cycle, right? So be it fuel economy or emissions from the cars or crash tests, there are models already available. Please reach out to us. We will be able to share it with you, right? So with this, I will pass on to Dev, who will walk you through the power systems modeling. So I have a task for here. These models are shared. Once you get time to today, please go through this and use MATLAB Online. I have also shared the link to access MATLAB Online. So once you get time, you can pick any of these tasks and then let us know your experience with the tool. Dave, after you.
Thanks, Ramana. Is my audio fine?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. Could you please pass me the share option for the PPT?
Yes. Done there.
Oh, okay, nice. So I will start by sharing my screen. So thanks, Ramana, for showing all the detailed level modeling of the power electronics and converters and bringing it all together for a electric vehicle. The idea behind the subsequent section that I will be taking is that you can follow a very similar approach to model any sort of renewable energy system. Right from the component level, you can actually model the whole system in a single environment, test it, and then you can actually also deploy it. So here, the system that I'm talking about is a solar PV system, and it is being integrated with a grid. So as I told, I come from a renewable energy background, right? And before joining MathWorks, I had actually spent time at a remote university in Assam known as Tezpur University. And what the university did was that all the buildings that they had, around 15 buildings, they put solar PV panels on top of all the buildings. And then what they did was that they connected that PV panel to the grid. And depending upon the amount of power they were being able to feed to the grid, they were getting a bit of discount upon their electricity bill. So how to develop this sort of system and how to understand the behavior of the system, its reliability, and do different sort of fault analysis before you deploy such a system is something that I will cover in this present presentation. So what actually composes of this sort of a renewable system? So this is a distributed system. And as you can see, we have the solar panels connected here. So when sunlight falls upon the solar panels, electricity is being generated. Now, depending upon what my algorithm for algorithm is, so there is a supervision algorithm that determines how much power I'm going to store in batteries, and then how much power I'm actually able to transfer back to the grid, where it might be used by my residential or other sort of commercial load, and other using a smart meter, I can actually pass it to the utility grid. So this is the overall system that we can model. So if we want to model a system which has basic components as well as certain complexities, where do we start So we can start directly by going over, and if you know the equations of the subcomponents, let's say I'm modeling a solar PV array. If I know its equations, I can actually use blocks in Simulink to make up the different model. So here you see the equation for a solar PV cell has been used to model its behavior. I can go and use physical components that are available in Simscape. So Ramana showed you quite these components, the resistors, the sources and all, and I can model it as an equivalent circuit. So using this sort of equivalent circuit, I can actually get the performance of the solar cell yeah, onto this particular platform. I can actually simulate that. But even better, what I can do is that we can actually directly start using the libraries that are there, like in Simscape Electrical. There is a library specifically dedicated to modeling renewable energy systems. And there I can directly get my solar cell model. So you can see that instead of going by this route, I can directly take the solar cell model and my task becomes a lot easier. And directly I'm just putting a current sensor across it, a voltage sensor across it, and I can measure its performance directly, right? So the task becomes a lot easier, and depending upon what my specific requirements are, I can actually introduce additional improvements, or I would say I can change this model according to my requirements. Now, we say flexibility in modeling approaches. So this would be one way to model where I know my system components and I'm building physical model of that system. The other might be the case where I might have some experimental test data. So in many cases, I might have the PV panels that I'm going to use eventually, and I might have the data, the performance that the particular PV panel gives under a particular, let's say, radiation. So if I have my test data already, I can also use a particular functionality in Simulink known as a lookup table. And what I do is that I interpolate the data and generate surface fit. And that is how I can actually take that experimental data also into Simscape. So both the approaches are available. If I know the components, I will directly model the physical system. If I have experimental data, I can import it, and using a lookup table, I can bring it in the Simscape environment and do the modeling, right? So once this is done, if you look at the nature of any sort of IV curve for a photovoltaic array, you will find that the voltage actually changes with the current. The current actually changes with the voltage with this kind of behavior. And if we plot it on the curve, it will have a sort of maximum. So you can see with voltage, the power increases and it reaches a maximum, and then it will drop. So now our interest here is to operate the PV array near the maximum power point. So that's how the overall efficiency of the system is going to improve. So how do we do that in Simscape? So in Simscape, the way to do it is to use to take this particular curve, and what we will do is that if you look to this particular curve, it will have different slopes on both the sides, positive slope on one side, negative slope on the other side. And by computing the slope, wherever the slope changes, I can detect the maximum power point. So that is exactly the algorithm that we need to incorporate here has to be programmed. So just to give you an example, we can take a maximum power point like incremental conductance algorithm, and it does the exact same thing. You can see that there's a differentiation of the power versus the voltage, and using those values, I can actually detect where the peak is changing, and the comparison will actually tell me which side of the maximum power point we are correctly operating, and try to change the operating voltage in such a way that we are at the maximum power point, right? We can actually leverage power electronics to do that. So depending upon changing ingredients level, the maximum power point might change, or depending upon temp. So those factors can be actually leveraged while designing the power electronics for that particular system. So effect of irradiance temperature, whenever it will change, the algorithm will automatically adjust my voltage and take me to the maximum power point. So how will I do that? If I have a system, let's say a maximum power point tracking system, I have the PV on one side, and I can directly connect to the load. But to have maximum algorithm, I can to incorporate it, I might have to have power converter in between them. And what this power converter will have is that it will have an algorithm that will sense the voltage and the current. And then there will be an MPPT algorithm that will take this voltage and current, and depending upon which algorithm we are using, like if we are using the previous algorithm on incremental conductance, we will use that to determine a duty cycle, and that will be in turn fed to the PWM generator, and that is then we do this whole maximum power point tracking thing. Of the once we have modeled the solar PV array, the next thing that we will do is that we will model the utility grid. So directly you can use the libraries in SimSafe Electrical to do that. So you see that we have a source side here. So we have a source side here which can be used to model the substation. You can see that the source is connected to a three-phase system, and then we have a transformer here. Via the transformer, we can actually connect it to the transmission line. So transmission line model is also available. And then once the transmission line is modeled, we can also model the other side where we have a step-down transformer, and then it is connected to user load. Okay. So all these libraries you can directly access from Simscape Electrical. And once you do that, you can actually directly connect it. So if you look at to this side, we have modeled this side, we have modeled the PV array. So this PV array will take in two factors. One is the irradiance, that is the intensity of sunlight falling upon this solar cell, and the other will be the temperature. So depending upon operating temperature, the performance of the PV array also changes. If we look at these outputs here, I get the output voltage and power from here, and I'm feeding that particular output here to this DC-DC buck control, and there I'm determining the duty cycle using the maximum power point tracking algorithm. And then I have a DC-DC buck converter, which is actually determining what is the power I'm feeding to the DC-AC inverter. And to the DC-AC inverter, I am directly connecting to the utility grid through a circuit breaker. So the whole thing, starting from the PV array to the connecting to the utility grid, has been modeled on one platform. And then I can directly simulate its behavior. I will show you that using a model that we have ready. So all of you have access to that particular model. So afterwards, you can try changing a few parameters and see how the whole system behaves. So here, if you see, this is the PV array that we have. You can get this particular block directly by going to the library browser. You go to the under Simscape, you go to specialized Simscape Electric and then specialized power system library. There you find that there is something known as renewables. And under renewables, we have solar, wind generation, and certain examples that you can later try on. If you go to the solar block, you can see that we have the PV array block here. So this is the PV I've used. And what we can do is that we can go into the PV array. So you can see that you can choose which of the modules you are actually using. So a number of blocks are already available with specification of different sort of solar arrays, PV arrays. And then you can determine how many solar modules you have connected either in series or in parallel. So that number you can directly put here, and you can actually also determine before using it in simulation, you can see what is the performance. What you can do is that you can go here, choose a specified operating temperature and a specific irradiance. And if I just press plot, I can see how the solar cell is going to perform for a given condition. So a couple of temperature plots is given, and depending upon the intensity, I can see its current and voltage, current and power, right? So once this info, what I can do is that I can just press OK here, and I can look to what are the other elements that I put here. So for the later exercises, suggest you can try coming here, and depending upon the time, you can change the value of irradiance here as well as the temperature here. So this you can change and try to see how this whole what kind of power you are getting from this particular solar PV array. So let me just simulate and show you on that side what kind of power I'm getting. Just pressing give me the values there. So connected. So you can see the PV block here. So after the simulation runs, just directly click this particular PV block and you can see the performance of this particular solar PV array that we have. So I can see that the simulation has come. I can go to this particular PV block here and double click it. What you see here is that I have an irradiance profile. It is around 1000 watt per meter square at a particular time, and then at around 0.5 seconds, near to 0.5 second, it drops to around 200, and then after a certain period of time, it again increases. So this is a simple fluctuation that has been incorporated. So in day-to-day life, the solar irradiance that falls upon a surface is sometimes changing depending upon whether they are cloud or other obstructions. So the same thing you can actually incorporate here. And then I can check what is the VDC here. So the DC voltage here, you can see that it drops a bit here, and more of it is not going beyond a certain level, beyond 450 volt. That's what I can see. And then I can see that the power is also, although it is constant here, it drops here and then it becomes constant. So this is how the power electronics is helping me keep a mean voltage, achieve a mean voltage here, right? Once I have modeled this, I can connect it to the grid. Here I have we have used a three-level IGBT bridge, and we have a three-phase system connected on this side. You can see we have certain loads here, and we have certain sources here also for the grid side. So you can also actually see that what happens, what is the amount of power that is actually being transmitted to the grid. So here, if I click, I can see the voltage that is being transmitted to the grid side, as well as the current. And here I can actually also note what is the power that is being transmitted to the grid. So initially, I see that the power was around between 200 to around 250. And then thereafter, when we had that instance where the solar irradiance was falling, we see that there was no power that was being sent to the grid. And then later on, we are also reaching to about 200 to 250 kilowatt. So this is one example of grid connected PV array. So all the subsystems that you see here, Ramana showed you a few of this. So all of this you can find under the Simscape electrical library. So that can be easily used to make this whole thing here. The control part that we're talking about, we have certain controls that determine the duty cycle and all. So that's put here. So we can see the inverter control part has been taken up here. So under the inverter control, we have put a mask here, but you can, there are a number of controls that we are doing. There is a maximum power point tracking system that is applying a perturb and observe algorithm. We're doing DC voltage regulation, current regulation, and PWM modulator, all using this particular block. So if you just go and look under this block, you are actually going to able to see all of that. So I will not go into more details of that, but definitely give this example a try after this particular session. And we would be happy to take any questions if you have on this. Do we have any questions, Dhruv, on this, or should I go ahead?
We don't have any questions right now, but can you show how people can find this documentation example?
Definitely. The thing that you can do is that if you are using this particular, I'm using as of now MATLAB 2020B, right? So I hope if you're using the latest version of MATLAB, or if you're using, let's say, Simulink Online, what you need to do is that just go into Simulink library. So I will just once again open simulation here, go to the library browser, and then under Simscape, just go to this last block, specialized power systems. Okay, and that you will find renewables library. Into the renewables library, I would definitely ask you to go to this particular option, renewable energy examples. You just go into this, you will find that we have a large repository of examples, starting from how you can model a microgrid to how you can model, let's say, a PV system upon that particular module. And this specific examples we have covered is this one, 250 kilowatt grid connected PV array. The way you can open up this particular model either on, let's say, Simulink or Simulink Online is this particular hyperlink here, and it is going to open up that particular example for you. Okay. So you can see that example directly gets open in my particular Simulink environment. And also the good thing about this particular model, to read more upon what details are there. So we can actually come here and we can read what the PV array consists of. So it consists of all the details that I mentioned. It is all specified here. Okay. So you can also see what changes were made during the simulation, and accordingly you can also try to make certain changes and see how that model performs. So definitely give this a try. Okay. So this is one aspect of the model that I wanted to see. The other aspect which I want to talk about is that this sort of example is actually widely used by the industry. So let's just take a user example of Alstom. So Alstom was actually working on a certain technology known as high voltage direct current transmission. So they wanted to actually demonstrate this to certain clients. So what they did was that they created the whole mm, the whole thing, the whole demonstration thing they created using a model-based design approach. So as Ramana was talking about, it was the model that was very centric to the whole design process. They created the model of this particular HVDC system, and specifically for this particular aspect of the control, they actually were able to test it using hardwares. So they were able to demonstrate a very simple system of around 24 megawatt directly by doing a digital sort of implementation, hardware and loop testing. And that is how they were able to quantify that the improvements that they were seeking were actually being implemented here. And overall, they also said that the whole process of implementation, like let's say for a particular system like protection system, was done within a week. So they were able to save a significant amount of time in the whole design process. So they could eliminate months and months of hand coding, because eventually after you're done with the model, you can verify and generate the code directly using one platform. And also you can create documentation for the control and protection system that they were using. So overall, they saved a lot of time while prototyping the whole system. And this is one approach that very much used by other industries, right? Aspect that I wanted to talk about in this particular webinar was about microgrids. So microgrids have created a lot of interest nowadays in the world of, let's say, standalone generation systems. So in case of microgrids, if you look at the microgrid, you can see that it is we have the utility grid now on the left hand side. Previously, we were connecting the utility grid towards the end, but this time we are having the utility grid here, and we have a certain breaker here, and then we are getting connected to the microgrid. So whatever issue happens in the utility grid side doesn't actually affect my microgrid side, right? So whatever I've connected here doesn't get affected to the grid issues. So this might be something very important if we look at how we are doing in our current circumstances. So right now I am having an electricity failure, which could be due to the utility grid. But if I was within a microgrid environment, chances are that I might have some other source to get my power from, right? So what are the things that are connected to the microgrid? I might have some generators. So you can see that generators are connected. We could have a diesel generator, or we could have some other forms of generators. Like the solar PV system, we might have some renewable systems, which could be a wind-based system. It could be a solar PV array, or it could be other newer systems based on biomass and all. So we might also couple this with the energy storage system like batteries. And then we might also have electric vehicles also. So it is very important now that with interest in electric vehicles, microgrid could be something that could be very important, right? And also here on the supply side, so these are all on the sources side. On the supply side, we might have some commercial establishment, or we might have a residential establishment. And depending upon what amount of power I am producing, I might also send some power to the utility grid. Doing this sort of supervision with different sources and what amount of power to send to different sort of sinks, I might have to have a sort of supervisory control, right? So that is what the supervisory control in a microgrid does. If you look over this one, uh, it might have certain tasks that it needs to do at an hour level. So the control that needs to be done upon the transients might have to be done at an hourly level. So it might depend upon what sort of objective I have with respect to peak shaving or load leveling, what sort of price I have in the energy market of the electricity, or what sort of power are being produced while integrating renewables. There are certain things that need to be taken care at the minute level. So chances are that might have a UPS type of system where I need to react in terms of minutes, right? And also there might be certain systems which need to respond at the second level. So all sort of voltage, frequency regulation, transient smoothing, and reactive power control, they have to respond very fast. So we have to take action at the second level. So this is what the supervisory control for that microgrid does. So just to give an example, peak shaving means that the power the load demand that I have, it shouldn't cross a particular threshold, right? So we know that grid pricing is sometimes based upon the peak load time. So when we are having lot of price goes up, so chances are that I might use a renewable source of power or take power from battery during those times. And when the price is less, probably I might take some power from the grid and recharge my batteries. So this is some sort of algorithm which we can accommodate. And also depending upon what sort of grid I am giving power, I have to absorb power or supply power to maintain the frequency of this particular grid, right? So we can do frequency regulation also. So these are the tasks that this microgrid supervisory control does. How you can do something like this, how you can do the control for this is that, like Ramana showed, instead of doing the traditional way, so the traditional way where Ramana showed initially was that you do the whole development of, let's say, the design and development in one environment, and then you implement it on an industrial, let's say, PLC controller. And finally, you get to test whether your system or whether your supervisory algorithm is working is when you actually get to prototype the system. But this might be very costly, right? Some of the other components might get fried or might get hampered, right, during this whole process. So instead of this, it's better to always go for model-based design. So here, instead of actually implementing it directly upon the equipment, I have a simulation equipment, which could be a speed code type of real-time machine, real-time sort of system. So there I can do a real-time kind of simulation. And then once I have done it, I can actually take that same code upon to the industrial controller. And then I can test that whole code. I can test that particular code before I actually take it to the field, right? So the whole design, implementation, test, as well as the control aspect, all of the whole development thing happens on one platform. And once I do that, I can generate code and directly send it, add it to my PLC, and use it in the field, right? So this is a workflow that is being used here. And what I do is that I can show you one example of where this particular case was used. So, okay, sorry for that. So this slide, I will just give an example of that particular case here. So this was particularly done for simulating the Hawaii microgrid. So there in Hawaii, when they were coming up with a microgrid, they wanted to know what sort of battery size needs to be there. So as you know, depending upon the battery size, you can actually also determine what could be the grid stability, because PV output changes as per the fluctuation of the radiation that falls. So if you want to avoid that, you can actually bring in a battery, and sizing of the battery becomes very challenging because battery price, the price for the whole giving the electricity is going to depend upon what is the size of battery you need to bring in. So there, what they did was that they modeled the whole microgrid, starting from the solar PV to the control strategies, to the different sort of sources and generation and things that they had. And they were able to compare the result among a wide number of cases, and that is how they actually came to size of the battery. And overall, they said that the whole model development cycle was cut by around 80% using this model-based, using this MBD sort of workflow, right? So the whole cost gets reduced for the battery sizing. And before you actually implement such a system, so this is a system that might be quite complex, you can actually verify that the simulation results that you get are actually valid. And you can also actually validate it with real data. If you have data, you can actually compare simulation with the real data. You can introduce different sort of faults and all, and that actually makes it very useful to demonstrate to the customer that your system actually works well. So you can introduce fault and you can see how the system behaves and what sort of stability you get for this particular system. So whatever they said was that MATLAB Simulink and Simscape actually helped them actually design the whole system. So you can see that interdisciplinary team worked. There were electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, control engineers, all working within the same tool. So that is the advantage that working with MATLAB Simulink and Simscape brings to you. So just to add, you can actually do system level behavior, model system level behavior. You can do component validation as well as component design, all using the same platform. And specifically, if you are looking for system where you might, let's say for system level behavior, you are modeling power from a motor that is connected to a, or if you're doing a component level validation for a converter. So all of this can be done on the same platform. So Ramana, if you want to add anything to this slide, do let me know. So you can see that the power control that is happening here is at the hourly level. Here we are doing control over the, here we are working at, we are doing control at the microsecond level. So switching faults and everything.
Please go ahead, Dev. Yeah.
Okay. So this was a poll that we had. Probably we can skip that right now. So the second task that we had for you was that please do open the power, this PV array, this particular block that you will find in the folder shared with you, and try to change the irradiation level. So that is the radiation level that is falling upon the solar PV array. So you can change it from 200 to 500 to 1000, and also try to see if you can change this time period. So from what time this particular solar radiation is from 1000, it is from 0 to 0.4, it is 200 from 0.4 to 0.8, it will be 500 from 0.1 to 1, and 1000 for the rest of the time, and try to see what sort of result you get for the particular simulation. And if you have any questions, do let us know. We can actually collaborate with you also after this particular webinar is over, and try to see what sort of challenges you have, and if we can have any, we can collaborate on any possible solutions from our side. Also, certain call to actions. These are certain resources we are going to share with you. So if you have any sort of questions, possibly you can also get addressed while you have a look at this sort of demos that we are sharing with you. So these are some of the demos that can get you started. And we have a training specifically in the area of modeling electrical power system with Simscape. So I ask you to just go through this detailed course outline that we have here, and if you're interested, just let us know. So that's it from my side, and thanks everyone for being here with us, and we are open to taking questions.